Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of D.E.I. Deathwatch, your semi-regular, not necessarily daily, digest of all that's going on in the downfall of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for joining me today. If you happen to be here from Midnight's Edge, welcome. Let me get into things real quick. First off, at the top of the chat box, guys, there is a link there, thank you, Keverdam, to the global giving charity for the LA wildfire victims. If you guys can take a look at that. If you're able to donate, please do so. But even if you're not, if you can share that out on social media, I would appreciate it. And elsewise, let's get into the stories. I've got 30 minutes or thereabouts. I'm on a clock here. So let's get into the wonderful world of what's going on in DEI. Let's go to Comcast. The FCC to investigate Comcast for having DEI programs. Oh boy, and what is the FCC going to do? Federal Communications Chair Brendan Carr has asked his agency to investigate Comcast's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, as first reported by Newsmax. Quote, "We have received an inquiry from the Federal Communications Commission and will be cooperating with the FCC to answer their questions," Comcast spokesperson Joelle Terry confirms to The Verge. Carr writes in the letter that the FCC is looking for signs that the company's initiatives have violated federal employment law, writing, quote, "I expect that this investigation into Comcast and its NBC Universal operations will aid the Commission's broader effort to root out invidious forms of DEI discrimination across all the sectors of the FCC, regulates," unquote. Okay, just as a side note, I am so glad to hear that the federal government, even if it is just the FCC so far, is looking into possible violations of federal employment law, because I bet you dollars to donuts, there's plenty. Since taking control of the FCC last month, Carr has threatened to pull broadcast licenses of companies like Disney and CBS for airing content that's not friendly to Trump and conservatives. He has also ordered investigations into NPR and PBS for, quote, airing commercials, unquote, which fellow Commissioner Anna Gomez told The Verge was a Trump administration, quote, effort to weaponize the power of the FCC, unquote. Carr was a Trump appointee, and he wrote the Project 2025 chapter on how the FCC should rein in big companies. Well, I don't know what to say about all that stuff, but the core of this story was, did you violate existing federal laws on employment? That's all I personally care about. All this other stuff about going after political rivals and such, that, not much of a fan of that, but we'll see. In addition to its cable, wireless, and internet services, Comcast owns a swath of broadcasters, including NBC Universal, streaming service Peacock, and many others. Disclosure, Comcast is also an investor in Vox Media, The Verge's parent company. Well, I appreciate the full disclosure of The Verge. It also generally puts your coverage into question, but otherwise. Under the new Trump administration, many companies are proactively winding down their DEI programs, seemingly to avoid becoming targets. Yes, primarily, but there's also no longer any financial incentive for it. Not that there was really in the first place, but certainly in the last 5 years, things have taken a downturn. Since at least 2022, when the writing was on the wall, legally speaking, with the affirmative action case before the Supreme Court, but it's become much more prevalent, and a lot of companies are speed running their winding downs so as to not get themselves in hot water, which I hope they do. I'll talk about that later. By the time an executive order on January 20th declared DEI was a corrupting force, creating, quote, a divisive and dangerous preferential hierarchy, unquote, Meta had already disbanded its diversity team, and Amazon had wound down some DEI programs. Google joined them less than a week ago. And I'll be covering Google, I think, as a separate deal here in one of my upcoming episodes, because it's big enough that it's probably worthy of an episode all by itself. Bezos and Zuckerberg, they were at the inauguration, and they're sucking up to Trump because they do not want to become targets. They're scared of federal action. They're scared of encouraging civil litigation from people who have been either employed or not employed, given promotions or denied promotions over the last 10 years or so under these programs. Because I tell you what, giant class action lawsuits should befall every one of these companies. They will destroy these companies, and they should, because violating something as vital to what our country's supposed to be, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and particularly Title VII or Title VI if you accepted federal money, should be something that people should be scared to violate. Otherwise, what was the point? Anyway, so there's Comcast. Our first story. Let me get to a couple of hellos here, and then I'll get on to story number 2. Bridget, hello. Kiro Soldier, hello. Juliet, hello. Corbin Dallas, hello. 01 Portnoy, hello. John Traxon, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. Angelverse, hello. Mike Savage, Blarg, Attack Alpaca, hello. Adam Nixon, hello. Kieverdam, of course, hello to you. Shady Grin, hello. Angela Ariaga, hello. Morgan King, hello. Mike R., hello. Shio Gorath, hello. Tall Person, hello. And the Alexander, hello. And for anybody I missed, anybody lurking, or anybody in the future. Our second story, moving on here. Let's go for Disney. We talked a little bit about this on the Midnight's Edge in the Morning show over on the Midnight's Edge channel, but let's go over it in more detail here. Disney is the latest entertainment company to comply, at least in part, we'll get to it, with Trump's anti-DEI executive orders. A new report says Disney will also be rewording its advisory message ahead of content that may be seen as problematic or offensive. Oh boy, everybody. President Trump's executive order against diversity, equality. Wait a second. Gizmodo. Wait a second. No, not equality. Not equality to Gizmodo. Equity. In this context, there is a vast difference between those two words. One means equality of opportunity. That's equality. The other one means equality of outcome. That's equity. So, Gizmodo, find an editor, just not Chris Cillizza. President Trump's executive order against diversity, equality, and inclusion DEI programs in the federal government has meant that companies large and small have also been reevaluating their own DEI programs. The latest to grab headlines is Disney, which according to a new report is scaling back, not getting rid of, scaling back its DEI efforts in a variety of ways, including changing warnings ahead of shows and movies containing outdated stereotypes or other potentially offensive content. See, this has nothing to do with DEI. This is just woke ideology that they're having to roll back in that instance. DEI is primarily about employment and contracting with vendors. But okay, if you want to put it under there too. According to Axios, Disney employees today received a note from the human resources chief explaining the changes. Some of it feels like tweaks made to the company's corporate buzzword speak, indeed. For instance, a category used to determine executive compensation that was formerly called diversity and inclusion is now called talent strategy and is, quote, more focused on how values drive business success. On all that nonsense. And this is something else that I'm really, really looking forward to more scrutiny coming down on, and that is executive pay compensation tied to diversity goals. Because can you remember a time in our country when a price was put on the head of an individual on the basis of their race, per se? Yeah. Not a metaphor they really, really want to think about too hard about, do they? But it was also announced that Disney is, quote, getting rid of its controversial Reimagine Tomorrow initiative. This is some of the bigger news, and the corresponding website, which was used to highlight stories and talent from underrepresented communities. The site, which came under fire from conservatives, was replaced externally in December by an updated hub on Disney's corporate website and also on Disney's internal website. Additionally, though it wasn't part of the official memo, Axios reports that disclaimers appended to potentially offensive Disney content will be significantly de-emphasized. So far, Disney Plus hasn't reflected this shift. If you go to the streamer to watch Peter Pan, for instance, the first screen before the movie starts will inform you that, quote, this program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people and cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe, unquote. You can also find this language under the Details tab on the app. However, according to Axios, moving forward, the autoplay will be removed, with disclaimers only appearing in the Details tab. It will also be a much shorter message too. Quote, this program is presented as originally created and may contain stereotypes or negative depictions, unquote. Now, personally, I honestly, save for sort of like the eye-rolling woke ideology stuff, I couldn't care less about a disclaimer before a film. At the end of the day, I'm more concerned, are they editing the film to take out things they think are offensive? Because if the film's presented in its entirety, whatever, I have to sit through, 12 seconds of some stupid disclaimer. Fine. But other than that, yeah. We can't say the same for Crocodile Dundee. But while it's tempting to lump Disney's latest changes in with all the other companies who've been hastily readjusting their DEI policies to avoid backlash in the second Trump era, it's not a leap to tie these latest adjustments into how Disney has been trending in recent years. Only within the last year or so. Let's be honest. Disney's not exactly some kind of poster child for DEI or elimination or anything. Its initial reluctance to speak out against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' 2022 Don't Say Gay legislation, well, tell that to its employees, which became part of a now concluded feud over land rights that expanded to involve the culture wars, Disney has been fighting the culture wars for years on this point. What are you talking about? Gizmodo, besides needing a better editor, was an early indicator that the company's leaning into being more conservative. Right. More recently, news broke that a trans storyline was cut from Pixar's upcoming Win or Lose TV show, not long after the same thing happened to Marvel animated show Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Well, you could also go back to Inside Out 2, where they cut content out of that was also leaning into some not kid-friendly territory. But okay. IO9 has reached out to Disney for comment on the DEI program changes. We'll update this post should we hear back. Well, anyway, yeah, between diversity, equality, and inclusion. Whoever wrote this really... why do I know that name? Cheryl Eddy. Well, it is the case they used to read a lot of IO9 back in the day, so that's probably why. Anyway, so yeah, Disney is kind of changing their tune. But the real question is, it comes down to employment opportunities, promotions, vendors, and so on. What is actually affecting real people, not just this surface-level window dressing stuff. Have their policies changed? What are they doing to purge out the discrimination in hiring opportunities? And not only in just, your regular everyday grunt in Disney, but also for their productions. What directors, what actors, what projects have they either green-lit or red-lit, depending on the race and or makeup of the individuals involved? Storylines elsewise, hiring of writers, and so on. We'll see. It's all a good sign. I'm still wary, and this is why, like I say, remain vigilant. This is all good news, but remain vigilant. In that vein, let's talk about Starbucks. Speaking of remaining vigilant, Republican sues Starbucks over DEI policies. Oh boy. Republican Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey has filed a lawsuit against Starbucks over its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, arguing they violate state and federal laws prohibiting race discrimination. But a Starbucks spokesperson told Newsweek, quote, "These allegations are inaccurate," unquote. Experts weighed in. Oh, I can't wait to hear what the experts have to say. But before that, thank you, Frosted Glass. Time for the real test, Song of the South on Disney+. Oh boy. Oh man, I don't even know if they can cross that bridge at this point. I don't know. That might be a bridge too far. I could say bridge a couple other extra times. And by the way, even though they'll never hear this, I thank the Bridge newsletter for alerting me to several stories that I'll be looking at either here or in future episodes. Thank you, Frosted Glass. I guess we'll see. If Song of the South returns to Disney Plus with a simple disclaimer, man, we will have made it. We'll have made it. Why it matters. Now that President Donald Trump has taken office, he unleashed a set of executive orders, one pertaining to DEI initiatives in the federal government. The order ruled that funds could be frozen for companies that do not comply. Trump also outlawed any messaging that promotes inclusion-based language. Sure. Since the executive order was released, PBS announced it would close its DEI office. We talked about that yesterday. And major companies like Amazon, Target, which we've talked about previously, and Google, which I'll talk about in the future, are also taking steps to trim or get rid of DEI initiatives. What to know? Okay. In the lawsuit filed Tuesday, Bailey alleges that Starbucks enforces race and sex-based hiring practices and illegally segregates employees. I wonder if he's talking about employee resource groups. I really hope he is, because I've been railing about that for years. The Attorney General also said Starbucks gave exclusive training and benefits to certain groups, violating anti-discrimination laws. The lawsuit comes after Trump invoked an executive order barring... We already know that. Okay. The Supreme Court also ruled 2 years ago that federal law does prohibit race-based discrimination, including within college admissions and in employment decisions. Well, no. Let's back up a little bit. What the Supreme Court said was that the diversity argument was not a justification to continue race-based admissions policies in colleges and universities, because that's what the lawyers for the colleges came to the fore with. They said diversity in and of itself was such a benefit to the college campuses and so on that race-based discrimination in admissions was a beneficial thing because of the after effects. The Supreme Court said, no, the diversity argument is not a justification to violate Title VI in the case of colleges or any organizations or entities that accept federal funding, and the 14th Amendment. The kissing cousin of Title VI is Title VII, and Title VII regulates employment decisions in private businesses. And so if the diversity argument does not let you get away with racial discrimination in college admissions, then the diversity argument does not let you get away with racial discrimination in employment decisions in private business. But the other thing you got to remember, race is on the same equal footing legally as sex, as religion, as country of origin, and so on under Title VII. So if diversity doesn't let you get away with race discrimination in colleges, it doesn't let you get away with any discrimination anywhere. That's why it's failing. That's why everybody's on the run, because any company that has stated a diversity quota or some kind of race or gender-based goal in percentages with their company workforce has put themselves in the sights of federal action and or state action in this case, or certainly civil action. The Supreme Court also ruled 2 years ago that the federal law does prohibit race-based discrimination, including within college admissions and in employment decisions. The court didn't make a ruling on employment decisions. The scope of the ruling dealt specifically with college admissions, but there was plenty of fodder there to reach over into Title VII. Boy, okay, I don't want to say that I'm a legal expert on this or anything, but a couple of these publications sound like they're not fact-checking themselves. That ruling put affirmative action policies in jeopardy at colleges across the country, and companies had to adapt their policies to ensure they were following federal law. No, everything the companies have been doing has always been questionable under federal law at best, if not in direct violation of it. If you've had a race or gender-based quota in your hiring practices, you have violated the law. The laws have been there since 1964. It's not that suddenly the Supreme Court's decision made it illegal to have a racial or gender-based hiring quota. It has been illegal the entire time. But people seem to be pretending like, oh, they just suddenly got their hand caught in the cookie jar, when before there was a sign that said free cookies. There was never a sign that said free cookies. According to the lawsuit, Starbucks broke the law by linking compensation to racial and gender quotas and making board membership decisions based on race and gender. Quote, with Starbucks' discriminatory patterns, practices, and policies, Missouri's consumers are required to pay higher prices and wait longer for goods and services that could be provided for less had Starbucks employed the most qualified workers, regardless of their race, color, sex, or national origin, the lawsuit said. Last year, Bailey also filed a suit against IBM for violating the Missouri Human Rights Act due to its race-based hiring quotas. Well, good. Oh boy, this goes on for a long time. Lots of quotes and things. But I think I'll skip that. So yeah, links to all of the articles are in the description below if you'd like to read the fullness of them all. But again, I'm on a bit of a time crunch here, so we're going to move over to the chat real quick. Shadowclaw, who needs fact-checking Scribelight? Well, apparently everybody, because we need fact-checkers everywhere. GDSOB, whoa, whatever will the other 264 genders ever do? I don't know. I'll have to actually get jobs based on their experience and skills, I guess. Captain O Opinions Show changed my mind on Song of the South. Okay. Well, let's move on. I got, two Well, let's get Costco in here. Now, this one, if I read the headline correctly, this is kind of interesting because there's an argument in defense of Costco. Let's hear it. Attacks against corporate DEI policies are legally weak, and companies like Costco know it. Oh. How so? Costco isn't backing down from pressure to change its diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. At Costco's annual meeting, the company's board of directors unanimously voted down a shareholder proposal from a conservative think tank that argued its diversity initiatives are, quote-unquote, discriminatory and called for the company to evaluate its DEI policies. Quote, DEI holds litigation, reputation, and financial risks to the company, and therefore financial risks to shareholders, unquote, read the proposal from the National Center for Public Policy Research. But the board said it believes its practices are legally appropriate, quote unquote. Costco's board explained that having a diverse set of employees enhances the satisfaction of its members who come, quote, from all walks of life and backgrounds, unquote. A diverse group helps the company select original products and shares insights into customers' tastes and preferences. Here's my question, and I've posed this question rhetorically for a number of years now. Describe to me a non-diverse hire. Give me what a non-diverse candidate for employment at your company literally looks like. What do you mean by diverse? Describe diverse. Define diversity. Costco's board also touted the benefits of having a diverse supplier base, which, quote, fosters creativity and innovation, unquote. Oh, a supplier base. You mean choosing to work with companies on the basis of the appearance of those that own said companies? Okay. The NCPPR, I don't even know that I know what that is planning to submit another anti-DEI proposal, this time at Apple's annual shareholder meeting later this month. Oh, the National Center for Policy Research. Gotcha. Apple's board of directors is recommending that shareholders vote against the proposal. Oh, good. Well, I'll look forward to seeing what Apple's going to do about this. Costco's and Apple's responses are a stark contrast to the rollback and diversity initiatives happening at other major companies. Yes, Costco and Apple seemingly are digging in and doubling down. I really hope that doesn't work out for them. Really, really I do. Again, I'm glad that there's been a line drawn where it's like, okay, guys, you got to stop doing this. Great, let's stop doing this. But unless or until actual consequences befall these companies, the danger always exists. It will rear its ugly head again. Google recently said it will no longer maintain its hiring targets, quotas, for underrepresented groups, while its parent company Alphabet has removed diversity-related language from its annual report. I'm going to do a whole separate Google episode of this series, probably next week, I think, early next week. Target will end DEI goals that were aimed at increasing Black representation among its ranks and promoting Black-owned businesses. We covered that the other day. Other big companies like Amazon, Toyota, and Walmart have also scaled back DEI-related policies. Following the George Floyd protests in 2020, many companies vowed to implement hiring targets, quotas, illegal quotas, support minority-owned businesses, and provide financial support to organizations that champion diversity. Sure. But conservative groups, or anybody that's just aware of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, have threatened legal action against DEI initiatives after the Supreme Court ended race-based admissions in colleges and universities. They could have done so prior to the Supreme Court's decision, but the Supreme Court's decision certainly made it clear that diversity as an argument does not allow you to violate the Constitution. If we needed evidence prior to that, I don't think we did, but there you go. President Donald Trump also signed an executive order that ends DEI initiatives within the federal government. In spite of these highly publicized efforts to threaten companies based on DEI policies, legal experts told us that not only should private companies be protected from legal action, really, but some companies' DEI policies weren't even that robust to begin with. Well, okay, here's the thing. DEI does not a crime inherently make. And I've tried to express this every time I brought it up. I always say I'll try to be diplomatic when I say that DEI policies are, at best, legally questionable. And the question might have the answer of no violation at all. Because simply saying you have a DEI policy is not necessarily a violation in and of itself. There has to be an identifiable mechanism in your hiring, promotion, recruitment or contracting processes that is black letter law illegal. And quotas are the quickest pathway there. If a company sets a percentage goal along with a timeline, that also helps. Something like, oh, by 2030, we want to have 50% women in our leadership teams. I can't get much more clear-cut than that. And many, many companies have done that. So yeah, DEI by itself, no, you have to, the devil, as they say, is in the details. You have to see exactly how are they executing these programs. Costco's opponents are trying to argue that the company is an example of woke progressivism, or gone amok, unquote, but the company is doubling down because its policies are helping the company from a business standpoint, said Stacey Hawkins, a professor at Rutgers Law School. Really? They can draw a line from DEI to profits? Quote, Costco says this is not about wokeness. This is about business strategy and sound decision-making based on market analysis and business performance indicators, Hawkins said. Well, how sound is it? Do you have any evidence that it's somehow beneficial? And here's the thing, even if it is, if you're benefiting off of something that is possibly illegal, what do we call that? The company's policies are also not illegal, said Charles Chapman, an associate professor at Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law. Okay, corporate decisions are protected by what's known as the business judgment rule, Chapman said. This means that the director of a corporation is immune from liability if they made decisions in good faith, acted as a reasonably prudent person would, and they acted in the company's best interests upon reasonable belief. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I couldn't go 110 miles down the freeway. Except Title VII. Except equal employment law. Basically, the burden of proof to show that a company acted inappropriately is, quote, very, very high, Chapman said. Well, again, it can be amorphous. Simply making a statement that we are a DEI company does not a crime make. Did Costco place executive compensation and tie it to DEI goals, percentage hiring goals, or leadership goals on the basis of race or gender? Did they have any kind of overall hiring targets based on race or gender or any other element that is covered under Title VII? If they did, most company charters also have exculpation clauses, which means that even if a company's share price goes down, that is not enough for shareholders to prove the corporation's director breached their fiduciary duty, Chapman said. Well, I'm not so much concerned about the fiduciary duty part of it. I'm just concerned of, is there any evidence that Costco's programs violated federal law? Did they set any targets? I'm not seeing them say so, and this is a long article, and I have to wrap things up pretty quick. So I think, what's this? What's this? Some people conflate the concept of DEI with affirmative action. Well, it's not an incorrect conflation, but affirmative action, while a subset of DEI, so it is, what do you mean? But some people think that DEI and affirmative action are kind of one and the same. Well, they are related by being a subset of one or the other. But affirmative action, while a subset of DEI, generally entails setting specific numerical targets on who to hire and takes a candidate's protected status into consideration, said Lawrence Schaefer, president and owner of the employment law firm Schaefer Helene. Well, let me ask again. Who does Costco consider to be a non-diverse candidate for employment? What constitutes a non-diverse candidate for employment at Costco, or team member, or leader? What is that? Affirmative action is rooted in the recognition that many protected classes have historically been discriminated against, Schaefer said. Sure. And that has to stop because it just inherently violates federal law. I've talked about this before. As soon as the Civil Rights Act went into place, one could say, and I could even accept, that there be a probationary period where the Civil Rights Act was essentially a confession of bad behavior and a promise to do better. right? But that doesn't do anything for anyone that suffered under the laws that existed prior to the Civil Rights Act. All the people, both young and old, who had lived under oppressive and suppressive laws in states and federally that made it impossible for them to get ahead in the world because of what they are, not because of who they are. I could understand a probationary period where it's like, okay, well, we've passed this law. You can't discriminate on the basis of race, let's say, or gender. But obviously people of a different race or female have been withheld from opportunities for decades. We need to at least try to make up for lost time. We can't fix the past, but we can at least try to get people back on a more even footing based on what happened before. I could understand that. Even if it did violate the established law, probationary period of, say, 5 to 10 years or something. But affirmative action lasted for decades upon decades upon decades. And finally, the Supreme Court said, nope, this just violates the law. The argument for diversity, the argument for fixing the past doesn't fly. The law is the law. That's where we're at. So arguments about, again, it'll all depend on what specifically did Costco do. What did it implement as far as mechanisms for hiring, promotion, contracting, and so on? If they did set any percentage goals, internally or otherwise, if they did say, you're not a diverse candidate, and what does that mean? They could be liable for something. And I think it's ridiculous for these law firms and these legal experts to say that DEI has no risk for companies. I think that is wrong. I think that is incorrect. But with that being said, I'm going to start wrapping things up. Because again, just as a note, this is a new series I'm doing, just a digest series, just a little 30 minutes or so of what's going on in the world. I decided to consolidate all of my focus on DEI stuff into one series rather than sort of piecemeal it out amongst the Sunday stream or other stuff, just to keep it focused. And since so much is happening so quickly in the last couple of weeks because of the Trump administration, seem more efficient to do it this way. So let me know what you think of this format in the comments or on the Discord. If you happen to want to join the Discord server, the link is in the chat right now on YouTube. Just click on that link to the Discord server. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you've actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is equality. Yeah, just say hello, equality, and I'll know that you watched the show. Outside of that, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, will be TED Excellence, or I'll go over another off-brand TED Talk, or perhaps an on-brand TED Talk, depending on the subject matter, for analysis and critique, along with TEDx Bingo. Otherwise, everybody, I thank you for joining me today. If you would, before you leave a like or a dislike. I appreciate the engagement either way. If you have something to say outside of this, leave a comment or say something in the Discord. And otherwise, everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday. I hope you have, pardon me, everybody who donated, either to myself or to the charity link at the top of the chat box for the wildfire victims. Thank you so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. And moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. I'll get this right eventually. I'm still practicing this short form deal. Also, Angelverse, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, Scribbles. You too, Angelverse. Everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.